It was a dark and stormy night in November 2022. John was working his usual DoorDash shift, delivering food to hungry customers throughout the city. He picked up an order from a popular burger joint and headed to the customer's address. When he arrived at the apartment building, he buzzed up to the unit number listed. No response. He buzzed again and waited. Still nothing. Strange, he thought. He called the customer, but it went straight to voicemail. A bad feeling started to wash over him. 10 minutes went by, and the customer was still unreachable. John debated just leaving the food outside the door, but he knew he had to at least try to complete the delivery. Nervously, he made his way into the building and up to the apartment door. He knocked loudly. Delivery for Chris. Still no answer. He thought he heard a faint moaning sound coming from inside the apartment. The hair on the back of his neck stood up. Something was wrong. He turned the doorknob slowly, and the door creaked open. The apartment was dark inside. "Hello, I have your food delivery," John called out shakily. He took a few steps inside. His heart was pounding. Suddenly, a bloody figure lunged out from the shadows, grabbing John by the neck. He screamed in terror as the bloodied face of Chris came into view. But Chris looked almost undead. His eyes were hollow and his skin pale. John struggled to break free from the iron grip around his throat. Chris was surprisingly strong, given his decrepit appearance. He opened his mouth, revealing bloody teeth, and tried to bite John's neck. John managed to push him off and made a break for the door. But before he could escape, Chris attacked again, punching John square in the face. John heard a crunching noise as his nose shattered, blood pouring down his face. He screamed in pain, but had to keep moving. He ran down the hall and down the stairs, Chris following close behind, lumbering and moaning. At last, John made it outside and jumped into his car, locking the doors. Chris bashed against the window, smearing it with blood. John sped off into the night, shaking and bleeding. What had happened to Chris? What was wrong with him? John realized he had barely escaped from the customer's apartment alive. He quit his delivery job immediately, traumatized by the demonic customer who ruined his face and his livelihood. He would have nightmares about this for the rest of his life. This take is based on a true story. A DoorDash driver was punched by a customer who was angry about his food being late. The driver said he was waiting for the food at the restaurant for over an hour and tried to explain the situation to the customer, but the customer did not listen and attacked him. The driver suffered a broken nose and a concussion. He said he was traumatized by the incident and quit his job. It was just another normal Friday night for Marcus, delivering food orders for DoorDash around town. As he pulled up to a house to drop off an order of tacos, a van came screeching up behind him. 4 masked men jumped out and ambushed him at gunpoint. "Give us everything you've got." One assailant barked at Marcus. Too terrified to resist, Marcus handed over his phone, wallet, keys, and the red DoorDash bag. The men shoved him into the back of the van and tied his wrists and ankles. Marcus pleaded for them to let him go, but they just laughed cruelly. The van roared off into the night. After a bone-rattling ride, they dragged Marcus into a filthy abandoned warehouse. The ringleader pulled out a knife and held it under Marcus's chin. "You're gonna help us get more deliveries tonight. Call up some of your DoorDash buddies and order food to this address," he commanded. With the knife at his throat, Marcus had no choice but to comply. One by one, he called other drivers and placed fake orders. The first 2 drivers arrived with deliveries and were promptly ambushed by the men. They beat the drivers violently and stole their cars. Marcus felt sick being forced to lure his innocent colleagues into this trap. But the men kept the knife pressed to him, ensuring his cooperation. After hours of this torment, the kidnappers seemed satisfied with their night's loot. "You've served your purpose. But if you go to the cops, we'll find you," the ringleader growled at Marcus. They dumped him in a ditch and sped off into the night. Shaken, Marcus made his way back to town, trying to process the horror he'd just endured. He wanted desperately to report the terrifying kidnappers, but feared what they might do to him if he did. From that night on, Marcus was paranoid whenever he took a delivery, constantly watching the shadows for any predatory vans. He realized no driver was safe as long as those masked madmen were on the loose. But with law enforcement unable to help, how could he ever stop them? The kidnappers had turned his job into a nightmare he couldn't wake up from. This tale is based on a true story. A DoorDash driver was kidnapped by a group of masked men who forced him into their van at gunpoint. They took his phone, his wallet, his car keys, and his red bag. They drove him to a remote location and tortured him for hours. They asked him questions about his personal information, his bank accounts, and his passwords. They also made him order food from other drivers using his phone, and then robbed them when they arrived. They eventually let him go, but not before warning him not to report them to the police. It was just a typical Friday night for Alex. He was bored and decided to order a pizza for delivery. He opened up the DoorDash app and placed an order to his favorite local pizza joint, Antonio's Pizzeria. About 30 minutes later, the doorbell rang. Alex opened the door and grabbed the pizza box from the delivery driver. He brought it inside, ready to dig in. As he opened the lid, he noticed something strange scrawled in black marker across the inside of the box. It read, "Help me. I'm being held hostage in the basement. Call 911. Alex stared at the message, confused. Was this some kind of prank? Maybe the pizzeria staff were just joking around? He examined the writing closely. It didn't look like the neat handwriting he'd expect from a pizza place employee. This looked frantic, almost panicked. Alex felt a chill run down his spine. What if this was real? What if someone was literally begging for help from inside this pizza box? But that seemed crazy. How would that even be possible? His rational mind told him it must be a prank, but his gut was screaming at him to call 911, just in case. Hands shaking, Alex dialed 911 on his phone.
911, what's your emergency?
The operator answered. Alex explained the bizarre plea for help he found in his pizza box. The operator assured Alex that officers would be there soon to investigate. 20 agonizing minutes later, 2 police cars pulled up outside Antonio's Pizzeria, lights flashing. The officers entered the restaurant and began questioning the staff. The owner, Antonio, insisted he had no idea what Alex was talking about. As the officers searched the premises, they came across a door that appeared to lead to a basement. Drawn by muffled cries from below, the officers headed down the old wooden steps. At the bottom was a terrified young woman, bound and gagged. The officers freed the captive woman, who was sobbing uncontrollably. They brought her upstairs and tried to make sense of the scene. Between frantic breaths, the woman explained that she was Antonio's wife, Isabella. After a heated argument earlier that day, Antonio had dragged Isabella to the basement and tied her up. He left her there all evening, alone and helpless. When pizza orders started coming in for the dinner rush, Antonio concocted his sadistic plan. He forced Isabella to write the plea for help on the inside of the box, thinking nobody would take it seriously. For him, it was just a joke, a way to further torment his captive wife. Antonio denied everything, but the message matched Isabella's handwriting, and the proof was clear. The police arrested Antonio on charges of kidnapping and domestic abuse. Isabella thanked Alex endlessly for possibly saving her life by taking the bizarre note seriously. Alex was relieved that he trusted his instincts instead of brushing the message off as a prank, but he remained haunted by the night's events. How long had Isabella been trapped down there crying for help that never came, as customers unknowingly ordered pizza just above her prison? Alex stopped placing delivery orders after that. He couldn't shake the feeling that other seemingly ordinary shops and restaurants might be hiding sinister secrets too. He drove by Antonio's Pizzeria a week later and saw it was boarded up and closed for good. Isabella endured a long recovery process after her traumatic ordeal. She stayed with friends, trying to move on with her life. But she knew deep down that Antonio had stolen her sense of safety and trust that night in the basement. His cruel actions would haunt her forever. As for Alex, he looked at delivery and takeout through new eyes after that harrowing experience. He started cooking more at home, wanting to know exactly where his food was coming from and who was making it. He felt pained thinking about all the desperation that must be locked away behind the doors of so many nondescript businesses. No matter how many times the police reassured him it was an isolated incident, Alex now regarded each restaurant worker with suspicion. Surely there must be cryptic pleas for help going unheard every day. But who was willing to listen? The world carried on, oblivious to the darkness being served up around the corner. After that nightmare delivery, Alex knew. You never really know who prepared your food and what they might be hiding. Maybe it's best not to look too closely inside the kitchen. Some questions are better left unanswered when you open your takeout box. Ignorance can be bliss when it comes to enjoying your favorite restaurant meals. But Alex's innocence was shattered forever. This tale is based on a true story. A DoorDash customer ordered food from a pizza place and was surprised to find a note on the box that said, "Help me, I'm being held hostage in the basement. Call 911. He thought it was a prank or a joke, but he decided to call the police anyway. The police arrived and searched the place. They found a woman tied up and gagged in the basement. She said she was the owner's wife and that he had kidnapped her after an argument. She said he had forced her to write the note on the box as a way of mocking her. It was a quiet Tuesday night when Simon received an order to deliver a burger and fries to a house on the outskirts of town. He navigated his old sedan down the country back roads, surprised that anyone would order DoorDash delivery this far out. As Simon pulled into the long gravel driveway, his headlights illuminated a decrepit farmhouse that looked long abandoned. He double-checked the address on his phone. This was definitely the correct location. Strange, Simon thought. He parked and grabbed the paper takeout bag from the passenger seat. As he got closer to the house, he noticed the front door was slightly ajar. Simon paused, an uneasy feeling creeping over him. Why would the door be open like that, waiting for a delivery? "Hello," Simon called out. "DoorDash delivery." No answer. He didn't want to just barge into someone's home uninvited, but something felt very wrong here. Mustering his courage, Simon nudged the door open wider. "Anyone home? I have your food order." The door creaked open to reveal the dark interior. Simon's heart began pounding in his chest. Fumbling for his phone's flashlight, Simon stepped cautiously inside. As the light illuminated the entryway, he gasped in shock. There, in a dusty armchair, sat a man stained in blood from head to toe. His eyes were wild and terrified. In a panicked whimper, the man said, "Oh God, you have to help me. He's going to kill us both." Simon looked closer and saw wires and electrodes trailing from the man's bloody arms and temples, as if he was rigged up to some sadistic contraption. "Who did this to you?" Simon asked, hands shaking. Before the man could answer, a loud static sound filled the room. A crackling voice came through hidden speakers. "Welcome to the party. I've been expecting you." Simon spun around, searching for the source. "Who are you? Show yourself," he demanded. The voice cackled. "In due time. But first, I want to play a little game. Cameron here was the last contestant. Poor lad, he lost. But now it's your turn." The bloodied man, Cameron, pleaded to Simon. "You have to get out of here. This psycho kidnapped me and has been electrocuting me for hours." And electrocuting me for hours, an electric current suddenly surged through Cameron's body, making him convulse in agony. The voice on the intercom laughed. "Don't spoil the surprise. Now, here are the rules. I've hidden keys throughout the house that will unlock Cameron from his chair. If you can find them within 1 hour, you both go free. If you can find them within 1 hour, you both go free. If time runs out, well..." Simon stood paralyzed in terror as the voice continued. "I'll be watching your every move through the cameras. So let the games begin. Your 1 hour starts now." The electricity stopped surging through Cameron, shaking off paralyzing fear. Simon asked where are the keys. Cameron wasn't sure. The psycho had drugged him when he kidnapped him earlier that day. Wasting no time, Simon began desperately searching the dilapidated house. He tore through every inch of the living room, kitchen, bedrooms. No keys. He only had 45 minutes left. Cameron shouted that there was a basement he hadn't tried yet. Simon rushed downstairs and swept his flashlight beam over dusty tools, boxes, and cobwebs. Finally, he spotted a glint of metal behind a shelf. "A key! I found one," Simon yelled in triumph. But as he reached for it, a gloved hand grabbed Simon's shoulder from behind. He spun around to find an ominous figure wearing a grotesque mask. "Well done, but I don't think I'm ready for the game to end just yet," the villain sneered. Back upstairs, only 15 minutes remained. Cameron was losing hope when Simon emerged. "He caught me off guard down there, but I managed to grab this." Simon revealed the key, but before he could unlock Cameron, the psycho's voice returned. "Impressive. But since you broke the rules, I'll have to penalize you now." With that, the psycho suddenly appeared across the room, holding a gun aimed straight at Simon. He froze like a deer in headlights. A shot rang out. Simon gasped, but realized he was uninjured. The psycho had shot Cameron in the leg. He howled in agony, bleeding heavily. "You bastard!" Simon yelled. "He had only 10 minutes left to search for the last key." "Tick-tock," taunted the psycho, vanishing from sight again. Simon tore through the house anew, upending every last inch. Finally, in a vent, he discovered the last key. He rushed to unlock Cameron, who was weak from blood loss. As the last lock clicked open, they heard slow, sarcastic clapping. The psycho had appeared once more. "Well done, you win. But don't worry, I don't give up that easily." He aimed his gun at Simon. "We'll meet again real soon." With lightning speed, Simon shoved Cameron out of the chair and towards the exit. A gunshot whizzed past Simon's ear as they ducked through the door. Simon didn't look back as he half-carried, half-dragged Cameron to his car. Tires squealing, they sped off into the night. Police scoured the abandoned farmhouse, but found no trace of the psycho. Simon and Cameron knew he was still out there somewhere, plotting his next sadistic game. The horrific night left Simon completely traumatized. He quit his delivery job, terrified the psycho would find him again. He was always anxiously looking over his shoulder, wondering if each customer might turn out to be the masked madman. There was no escape from the lingering dread. The psycho had shattered Simon's psyche. He knew deep down that the demented villain would return someday for another round in his evil game. And this time, Simon feared he might not make it out alive. So he hid from the world, refusing to answer his door or make deliveries ever again. It was the only way to elude the sinister force that had turned an ordinary night of food delivery into Simon's worst nightmare. He would carry the scars from that farmhouse forever, haunted by the masked face that stalked his dreams. This tale is based on a true story. A DoorDash driver was delivering food to a house when he noticed that the door was slightly open. He knocked on the door and heard a scream from inside. He pushed the door open and saw a man covered in blood sitting on a chair with wires attached to his body. He said he had been kidnapped and tortured by someone who had made him order food from DoorDash. He said they wanted the driver to join them in their game. He said they were watching them through cameras and speakers. He said they were coming for them.